All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name's Michael Scanlon on our first Street Smart Ventures podcast. I am so happy to have our very first, very important VIP guest, Dazmarie Maldonado. Daz, thank you so much for being here.
Anytime. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I just, wanted to open the floor to you if you'd want to share, talk for just a minute about who you are and anything you want our listeners to know about you and what brings you here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for giving me the floor. Hello, everybody. My name is Dazmarie Maldonado. I'm a 22-year-old Afro-Latina from the Hartford community. I was born and raised in Hartford. I am a person that is an aspiring philanthropist. I really just want to make a huge impact on my community. I have the passion for our youth, of course. Me personally, I'm an entrepreneur as well. I am currently in college. I majored in psychology, and I'm also looking to get into the healthcare field. That's a little bit about my personal approach and contribution to society and the world. Um, with my entrepreneurship journey, I have a business called Simmer Down Sensations that I started back in 2020 when we all experienced a big pause in our life. I really sat back in that moment when I was going through my own personal troubles and really realized that there's a marginalized communities out there that need some sort of resources, need the attention. And, that is something that has always been in my heart since I've been a child, a young girl. So I'm here today by the grace of God and by Michael, which I'm very humbled to be here. It is a passion of mine, again, to talk about the disconnected youth, community violence, a lot of big issues that we all experience hands-on and personally, and sometimes we play a witness to it. And I really just want to open up the floor, talk about these things with Michael, and really emphasize what we can do as a society and work as a whole community to really combat these issues head on. So
Wow. Well, so many amazing things I want to follow up with. Okay, where do I start, Daz? So I think, first I just want to say to our listeners, I met Daz through different councils. So I got to meet you on the youth subcommittee for the governor's council. And, so right away, Daz and I connected on what do youth and young people need, what's going to make a difference. And I think a word I always hear you saying every meeting I'm in with you, right? It's action. How do you take intentions to action? And that kind of leads me to my first question, right? Is what can the system, adults, professionals, really anyone, right, as humans, what can we do to support young people?
absolutely. Great question, Michael. And I think this is a question that a lot of people feel is out of touch. The system. When you say the system, again, I'm going to emphasize when you say the system, we're talking about school systems, we're talking about adult allies, we're talking about the people who are leading these organizations that disperse these resources through the community. We're talking about just the overall city, the government, everybody, all the adults. And I guess that first leads me really to talking about the educational system. That is something that the system has a really big piece and a big play into how our children and how our youth are not only articulating themselves, comprehending what's actually going on with literature, with the world, with grasping the reality that they're in. I just want to also emphasize the staff, the structure of the school. There's a ladder and there's a domino effect when it comes to the educational system. We are having a lot of adults in the system that are exhausted, underpaid, lacking resources themselves. And this trickles down to the youth that they're spending, you know, a lot of time with. These youth children are in school about 80% of their life. And when you really like think about that, there's 180 days in a school year. That's a lot of time to have enough influence on youth. So I really want to just emphasize number one, the lack of curriculum. The curriculum does not support the reality of where we are in 2024. Our schools don't really talk about what it is to leave school, what it is to actually go out in the world, and what it looks like to be a contributing member of society. And I'm going to dive into that a little bit more, like, financial literacy. Not every school district offers whether it's a workshop, whether it's an actual course, a class, or just any person now on the campus that can speak to financial literacy or at least teach it and expose the youth. That's number one, which kind of affects our systems and our economy when they grow older. And what these young men and women are going into the workforce, they don't know how to allocate their funds. They don't know how to save. They don't know how to invest. And they don't know how to help other disconnected youth and put back into the community. So I'm going to start there with the educational system. That's a big one. Also, I'm going to emphasize that schools are the only place that a lot of students that aren't exposed to mental health services, that is the only place that they gather those resources and have the opportunity to take advantage. So I really want to emphasize that is one big thing that our system is lacking. Great education across the board as a country. I really and granted, Michael, as much as I want to be superwoman, right? I understand that our country it looks so different up from West Coast to East Coast, from North to South. It's different. And that is just something that we can't change as of right now. But if we can all as a country have a like mind set when it comes to the youth and understanding how to prioritize children and what the tools are so that they can develop into great adults, great human beings, period, with the help of their school. And, a lot of people can argue and say that this is the parents' responsibility. And yes, a lot of it has to do with the parents' exposure and commitment to their child's growth. However, the reality is when a child doesn't have a very inviting parent or a parent that is aware, or the parents, shout out to the parents that work hard. A lot of these parents sometimes want to be there with their kids and spend this extra time, but can't afford it. Literally, not don't, can't afford it. So that is the first thing that comes to mind with the system. That also kind of leads into the after school programs. Not every school offers after school programs or snacks. I also want to emphasize the system has a role in nutrition and the food and how we actually can keep these youth surviving, not even surviving, but enjoying life, being present. And the structure of just the household has a big play in that. So again, after school programs, I really want to emphasize that, especially in urban communities, when they don't have after school programs on that school campus, they look to Boys and Girls Club, a YMCA, a safe haven in their community where they can go, whether it's just meeting friends, whether they can't go home because it's either not an adult or not a home to go to. It's so many different situations that we have to take in account. And that's where the system really comes in, creating a flat line or foundation for everybody to at least be able to go on their tippy toes and reach, you know? And lastly, my last thing I want to really emphasize is also being a good navigator. To all my adult allies out there, those who are working in nonprofits, community organizations, schools, whether you're an entrepreneur and have a passion to help youth yourself and you're looking for whatever that looks like your approach, being a good navigator, being a good person that can listen, that can meet the youth where they are, and understand that once again, not everybody has the same home, not has the same structure, wasn't brought up the same way, educated the same way. So to every adult out there, if you can touch a youth just by your words, by your presence, by setting an example, by being aware of who's watching, I think that's what we can do as a system to really be there for the youth, or at least the first step, just acknowledging them.
Wow, I'm just taking a second because you dropped so many truth bombs, Daz, right? So I kind of, circling back, really, I agree 100% everything you said. I mean, that's, and I think there's power in acknowledging it. But also, I'm just curious, like I'll kind of want to start back to what you shared about our educational systems. I mean, to me, like, because I'm jotting notes as you're talking, right? So I can make sure I reflect and circle back. I mean, you talked about staff being burned out. That doesn't surprise me. We hear it all the time. We see it. And I'm just curious if you have any other thoughts on like if you had a magic wand, what can we as a society, as a state do when the people who are there to support people, right? Like, let's go, wand time. Um, what can we do in a world where inequalities, the gaps getting bigger and bigger, and um, everyone who's not like a billionaire right now is just like at their wits end and struggling and straining, it seems. And so I kind of, you know, you were talking and it kind of reminds me of something I say, my three P's of like what I do in my work. Because I was so excited and talking to you and diving in. I didn't share a little blip on Street Smart Ventures. So Street Smart Ventures really helps young people gain the skills they need to succeed. And I'm gonna say, we really help as an agency to help young people see themselves differently, see themselves as successful, to see life as a success story and a journey of learning. I think the old paradigm and way of helping young people is just like, oh, okay, we'll help you find a job. Well, like, I mean, that's great and all that. And I'm not like knocking that. But I think part of what I love about Street Smart Ventures and the work we're doing, and as we're in a growth phase, is we not only want to help young people get the job, we want to see themselves as a job, as entrepreneurs, as people who can create things and move forward in life and break past those barriers. So I think we're kind of, as you're talking about change making and us as a modern society, the old ways don't always work. And that's my little tangent, but in my scope on saying that for Street Smart Ventures, I see it also as people, policies, projects. So kind of like that's kind of where my brain's going on maybe how do we tackle some of these things. But you know, I don't know, is there anything you want to say to any professionals who are struggling out there or feel like they don't have the time or the patience or just a moment to breathe for those who are in helping professions?
Absolutely. First, I definitely want to answer your question and say to all the professionals out there, and as a young professional myself, we need to go back to our innocent younger selves, right? Remember that first dream or first visualization you had of what you would look like, how you sounded, what you were doing at an adult age, doing what you wanted. I think as we grow up and go through these systems, it desensitizes us to who we truly are. We're so used to these policies, these rules, these examples that have been outdated, right? That we are still keeping ourselves in the box when we need to be outside of the box. You know, the terms say, oh, think outside the box. No, we need to fully be outside of the box, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. And I really want to emphasize it's also important to understand that as an individual, you're a human first before you're a professional. So, really having a good source to express yourself. I mean, we're all adults. These teachers are also mothers. These teachers are fathers. They're great aunts. They're sisters. They're brothers. You are human. So feeding your soul what it needs, whether that is faith, whether that is looking for other educational opportunities or advocating for those opportunities within your employer. And I want to emphasize how hard it is. And to the employers out there, I pray that you guys view this. Really consider your employees as human. I really wish that we lived in this perfect world, right, Michael, where work with people that are considerate, people who understand that we're just creatures at the end of the day, you know? And even though this worldly stuff can get so heavy, you know, people like you, Michael, places like Street Smart, places like The Village, OPP, these are also other opportunities for professionals to work with other professionals, to see different approaches to balancing that work, that home, and also your own personal aspirations, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody has a dream. So I really, really, really go back to those professionals that are burnt out, you know, when you clock out at the end of the day, you know, another thing I want to emphasize is these teachers get a lot of heat. They're not mental health professionals as well. They aren't taught how to be personable with these youth and these students. Um, and I want to emphasize that not every professional knows what to do in certain perspectives or situations with youth when they are having these challenges. So that adds on to their personal baggage because it's about, did I do the right thing at work today? Did I give this kid the love that I could possibly give them? It goes into a lot. So I just bring that all right back to the mental health aspect, really making sure that, even though we all want to be here for the disconnected youth, that, that particular district or that school aligns with your personal beliefs, your principles, and what you want to be as a professional. That is also a big thing to emphasize and I don't like to use the ism terms, but I'm gonna say ageism. When we also as professionals really want to put that professional boundary between adult and child, but sometimes the way that it was taught to us and the way we are trained isn't the best approach for certain youth. So understanding how to be a little bit more of a good listener, having another colleague to kind of once again go back and forth like, hey, what's your approach with these students, and not every district, not every professional has this opportunity. But, if I had my magic wand, I would have a support group for all teachers and all professionals that work in these very tense environments because as a youth, even me being in certain programs, I've always observed who was a burnt out adult. And not every child is considerate when they understand those signs or see those signs.
Mhm.
So again, really just emphasizing choosing the right employer or really advocating or starting your own support group for whatever concerns you have or things you want to roll out, whatever agenda, that is a really big thing. And also, again, seeing these children as professionals one day in the future when you retire. That is just the reality of the world that we're in, and people forget that there is a bigger picture to everything. So, if I had my magic wand, it would all be fixed.
Wow. So I want to follow up on a couple things, Daz.
Yes, please
So
do.
something, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'm paraphrasing the exact quote, but like, have you heard of like your zip code determines your destiny? And that's what I'm hearing from you, right? Like I grew up in like an average, like middle class town. I have friends who grew up in mega rich town. So like, and I have friends who, grew up in different towns. So like, and I'm hearing from you that, it's just highlighting the inequalities in our society that you could literally like based on a map, right? You could be like down the street if it's a different town, if you're by that line, and you could have a friend down the street who's in a town and a school system full of resources, but just based on where you grow up without as a child, as a youth, without any control to change that, right? Your trajectory can be so different just because of how our systems are laid out.
Absolutely. And I also want to emphasize because that is such a great phrase, even though it may not be the best positive, it's real. And I think that in this day of age, people like to think because we're in 2024 that everything is clear cut, there's no judgment, there's nothing. And in fact, and actually, it's been heightened. The standard has been heightened. The misunderstanding has been heightened because everybody is moving so fast, because this technology keeps advancing. And instead of us looking up, we're all looking down all the time. And nobody really understands the psychological effect of that after a while. Um, Diversity training is very important for staff. And as you said, not every district emphasizes those importance when it comes to those staff development plannings or meetings. Definitely diversity training. Also, again, workshops often throughout the school year, if possible, or just in general with professionals that even work at these other organizations that support youth. Really emphasizing the right type of education for these professionals and their careers. It can also eliminate employment discrimination for people that don't have that connectivity to have that knowledge so that they can connect. There is a big difference between experiencing things. Of course, we always want to talk to somebody that can relate firsthand. There's nothing more satisfying in the world than to be heard. And when I mean heard, I mean comprehended. I mean they active listen, they feel you. They're imagining their own situations as you're talking. That's what it really truly means to be heard. And that's not, you can't access that everywhere. And our youth can't access that. So again, I really just want to bring it back to the whole aspect that maybe it shouldn't be like that. And I'm talking to you, system, it shouldn't be like that. If you are going to qualify or deem somebody qualified for a job as a professional, there should be standards. There should be things that are mandatory for training so that the people that are receiving these services do not have to suffer or have to compensate for the lack of experience or the lack of help due to a professional not properly being trained or having certain skills to assess multiple different situations and environments.
So many great things, Daz, as always. I just want to
Thank
follow
you.
up and share a teeny story and bring it back to you.
Yes.
What I'm in love is, and I think to me this is actually kind of hopeful in that speaking to professionals, the system is, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but please chime in if you agree, is I
Yes.
think there can be so much pressure to get it perfect, to be perfect, to like lose sleep at night sometimes because you know you it's we as humans, most of us want to help people and do the best we can. And I think there is a freedom in it's okay to not know everything and it's okay that we cannot be perfect. However, that being said, I think I love what you talked about and shared, seeing people beyond how they are now. I've personally said that in my own presentations because I really struggled. I'm a brain injury survivor, so I had a lot of my adverse experiences at 4 years old, like all through elementary, really, and my mental health, my anxiety and depression really was challenging in middle school and high school, and then my fumbling years after high school, right? And so if I didn't have professionals who saw beyond how I was then, and visualizing success, just like you said, Daz, that we all don't get that. And I'm so blessed to have had that. Um, I'm curious, how can we help the system at large see everyone with all the potential that they have to offer? And I think there's so many layers to that. And I know that's a really big thing to talk about, but I just, it almost feels like the lottery, if that sounds kind of odd to say. It's like just some random lottery, and like some people get understood, some people have the access, and how do we make it, like you said, that universal, like making that world the safety net. You're talking about emotional safety, physical safety. You're talking about resources, having a place to fail, right? I have a phrase called failing forward, right? And I think, and we'll talk about this in another question we had prepared for, but I'll mention it now. A quote in our all the preparation we did, I vividly remember you said, Michael, other generations, other people were allowed to make mistakes.
Yes. That it is a lot. And I think the perfect way to kind of sum up and subcategorize these aspects and what it's really going to take is I'm just going to say bottom line, personal development and pairing. And pairing is a phrase a lot of people aren't familiar with because, when you work in certain professional, fields, you learn different terminologies to the simplest things. Pairing is just literally putting two humans together to be compatible. That also goes into personal development because what also is a big barrier for these professionals is the fact that, it's beautiful because you and I, Michael, right? We've always been big dreamers and we've always gone through certain experiences that made us so much more enthusiastic to experience, and I don't know about you because I've had the pleasure to meet you now while you're this amazing person, but I even took some time to become who I am today. So as you said, seeing us at those real moments when we're really having those human moments, it's key to at least have different activities or different ways for self-expression so that youth can articulate themselves and help the professionals that are at hand, because it takes a lot, right? A professional can approach a youth with certain services and resources, but that youth has to be willing and take accountability for the fact that they are a human too, and they have to agree to this help and follow through and maintain themselves to receive the opportunity and keep it after, or make it into something for themselves, or share that with their community. I think that that's a big thing, and I really just want to share a quick story of mine. I, in fact, was a disconnected youth. I really want to specifically talk about the beginning of my high school career. I was dealing with so much. Um, Being somebody who grew up in the north end of Hartford and also have parents that were born and raised in Hartford also. Um, my parents were very overworked, and I appreciate them for the foundation that they have worked so hard to provide me. But I really want to emphasize the disconnect because certain things I was going through as a teenager, and I didn't have parents that were there emotionally to be available. And that really made me an angry student. I would go to school not knowing how to express myself or get this energy or how to express my feelings. And we're very immature at that time, so it comes out through disruptive behavior, right? It comes through attitudes and being disrespectful, but these are all warning signs. And this is the goes back to the educational piece that I was telling you about, Michael, a little earlier. Even if you are a person that hasn't experienced certain things or certain emotions, being aware of what they look like, different examples of how they sound, and what spaces they can show, that goes such a long way. Um, and specifically, what I mean by personal development and these opportunities are these social and mental health resources, working with a guidance counselor to sit down and understand who you are, simply even talking about your favorite color, your favorite hobby. Starting small and starting at those baby steps can help soon develop into what is your aspiration? What is your dream? What does it smell like? What's something you've never experienced? What's something you feel like is being held back from you? And when I was going through an experience where I was homeless, my family had a fire my sophomore year. So I was so angry because a lot of things were happening and I still had the responsibility to be a student, right? Because another thing I want to also emphasize to my professionals, remind these students why they're in school. I know we live in a day of age where after the pandemic, took its course, the educational system took a really big hit. And I also want to emphasize that I'm a graduate of 2020. So shout out to everybody out there that is still grinding, that got their senior year taken away from them. We missed out on those last minute conversations and council meetings when it comes to preparation for college and adulthood and what it actually looks like. We lost a lot. And I don't mean to say that in a way where we're asking for pity, right? But I'm saying that in a way where that can strip a lot of power from somebody to consistently go through things on top of heightened personal home situations. Again, when I was going through my homelessness with my family in high school, I was very angry. And by the grace of God, because I utilized community resources, because I knew me personally as a younger youth, knew that that was my only way out. My parents weren't able to financially cover college or any of my professional endeavors. And living in a state like Connecticut, for example, is a barrier itself. Unfortunately, systematically, of course, the demographic plays a role in who you are on a piece of paper, but also the way you show up for yourself counts against you as well, and the economy. So, with that being said, I really looked forward to those nonprofit organizations, right? That didn't charge a fee to come in their doors, that had certain activities already ongoing when I'm walking through the door, and I just quietly slip my way in the back of the workshop. But moments like that really showed my potential, and the professionals that seen me said hello to me, noticed when I came in with an attitude, or, when I sat there and unfortunately disrespected them verbally, didn't take it personal because they understood that there was something deeper that needed to be penetrated, something that needed to be unveiled. And then they started the personal development process. Who are you, Daz? What do you like to do? Do you even know who you are? You know, what is this pressure you feel when you talk about accomplishing certain things or experiencing certain things? Where does that come from? What have you gone through that has made you be like this? You know, you'll be surprised, Michael. Not everybody at first is very open to answering those questions or having very intimate moments. But if you keep trying, or maybe if the next professional tries, they can get through. And I think that that's what it comes back down to. And I'm sorry, I kind of went on a tangent, and it's so many different aspects that we can attack specifically as professionals. And again, I'm going to speak on behalf of the youth as youth, because it also starts with us. It starts with us wanting it.
Mhm. No, and this was not a tangent. This was all amazing, Dad. So a couple things I want to follow up on from that.
Yes.
I think this is especially powerful, and I think this is going to help a lot of listeners because what you shared, Daz, and thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your personal experiences as always. I respect that and honor that, and I know our listeners will. And if I hear of anyone who doesn't respect that, then I'll have to have a word with them. But there's a phrase, that I use a lot. It's like again, coming from the old paradigm, the old way of what's wrong with you to go into what happened to you, and I in your own I heard you say that. But I really, if you're okay talking about it, I'd love to hear from you a little more on you talked about your anger and disrespect, how that manifested for you. And to be honest with you, when I was struggling, how I showed up was like the invisible kid. I was like the ghost. I'm like, I wanna like fade on through and just like get by. And I was like, so we all, like every young person's different. I just saying that, like when I was struggling. But I'd love to hear from you on, was there a person or a moment that
Mm.
helped you understand your anger or harness that or transform that? Like you talked about how you would come into some services or programs. Is there something you can really help talk about that? I think anger is healthy and misunderstood in some ways. Like I'm not a clinician. Let me say that. I'm just saying anger, I think, is the most misunderstood emotions. And I feel like, and I cannot speak for you or all young people, but I feel like anger can be justified. And I would love to kind of find out um, was there a moment that really like impacted you or helped you see anger or what you needed in a new way?
I'm just gonna take that because absolutely. I think everybody has a tipping point, and now that I am a woman of God and I have a lot more faith and trust in God, I want to just emphasize and kind of backpedal what you said. Yes, anger is a feeling that is needed, right? Because anger kind of shows us that we're tired of something or something is not for us. Now, anger also has a funny way of showing up. And that's where we have to learn self-control. Because if we don't have self-control, that anger can either teach us a lesson and show us what we need to do or what steps we need to take as an alternative, or unfortunately, it can consume us and it can turn us into our own enemies. You know, when we're angry, we sit there and we replay things in our head. We sit there and we aren't allowing that creativity to flow, and also all aspects of ourselves. You know, anger sometimes shows up for people in their heart. Sometimes anger shows up in the mind. Sometimes anger shows up deep within the soul. And that is a big factor of that. So I just want to, of course, go back to what you said about me specifically when I first started dealing with my anger. Um, Again, that house fire that we experienced and seeing my family displaced, to watching my parents that worked so hard. And I also want to emphasize first, and I want to really speak on this piece because there's a lot of disconnected youth that can relate to this. Having a single parent household or a two-parent household that has either young parents or parents that didn't have parents can also amplify what you are going through on a normal basis, because emotional intelligence, and I want to also emphasize for those who are from an ethnic background, it's not taught to us how to articulate ourselves. A lot of the times our feelings are disregarded or because we are watching our parents figure out their own emotional intelligence or their own way of perceiving or accepting what is going on or what has gone on even before we came in the picture can definitely affect us. And coming from parents that were raised in an urban community, weren't financially supported at all, didn't have parents who were educated that can show them the way. My parents were really young parents. And first, I just want to also emphasize the generational blessing of you learning. My parents had me at 20, and I'm 22 years old talking about this with no children. So, sorry to have emotional moment, but I'm kind of just taking that in now as I'm like thinking and answering this question, like, wow, that made me angry, right? Being a young teenager and not being able to talk to my mom or my dad because my struggles and what I'm going through isn't even as close of a hurt to what they've experienced, you know? And it's also the pressure of growing up in an ethnic household that doesn't have generational success, where there's a certain pressure to win. It's a certain pressure to just get to that point. But because aren't educated or aware of how many steps it really takes to become a professional or develop that person to accomplish that dream or accomplish those generational blessings, it comes through negative feelings. So when my family lost that house in, we experienced homelessness. Of course, I was like, why is this happening to me? I'm going to school and I'm looking a certain way. And, shout out to my family. I really appreciate family because we weren't on the streets and I'm grateful. But I wasn't in an environment that was supportive of my mental health or wasn't a place where I can study and do homework. So I would come from a very overstimulating environment and I'm going into school and being told what to do, to sit down, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I can't even think because I haven't processed what I just came from to get to school, And I've always been very energetic, and every youth has a talent, and that talent needs to be guided in the right way. And I didn't understand the power of my presence as a teenager. So when I had negative emotions, they were amplified and they were more noticeable than everybody else in the room. And with that being said, the tipping point really for me was having certain doors slam in my face from being disrespectful. And when I say disrespectful, I mean just being a teenager, use of profanity, not just having the patience to sit there and listen to an adult that can actually help me or has experienced more life than me. Those kind of naive traits that can be a lot for a professional. And I just want to also say thank you to all the professionals in my life that have dealt with me, K through 12, honestly, because I was not an easy kid, but I was just a kid that needed love, that needed to be affirmed, needed to be properly groomed into a professional or a great person that can actually do something in this world. That's all I wanted. And I just didn't know how to articulate that. There was two things that really changed that year for me. I discovered an ambassador program through the Hartford Yard Goats. It was a young ambassador program where it was basically um, a leadership opportunity for high schoolers to do and be a part of the overall minor league baseball team and also gain personal and professional development, experiences, workshops, tours, college trips, all of the above, like the best well-rounded program you can think of to put a teenager through that is unsure of themselves, don't even know where their future lies, has a lot of skills to learn. Especially those tangible skills and those IT skills, those hard skills you need for employment. I want to emphasize that this program offered that. And that was so big to me at that time because my parents didn't even have certain skills. I didn't even really understand what they were actually advertising, but I knew that this could be the step to have a turning point for myself. And I also want to really thank Jamie Roderick, which is my Spanish teacher in high school, because she was a teacher that I gave that lady, she could have literally quit the fifth day meeting me, and she didn't. And she held on even through our rough patches. And I don't even know where to start with a woman like her. Every time I would come in her classroom angry, she would hold me behind the back of the class and really sit me down and also say, not what's going on with you, who are you, but what is happening? What happened to you? What's going on? You know, you look upset. Did you eat today? Are you able to provide yourself the hygienic practices that make you feel at your best? That woman saw me as a person, not as a disrespectful, or I hate to say it because I just want to be real with our viewers at the end of the day, because it is different in every district. Not that, urban student or student that is coming off of a bus driving 30 minutes out here. I wasn't seen as that with her. She saw me as a young girl, as she saw herself and as she was once upon a time, and she would bring me clothes, would bring me self-care products. She taught me about essential oils and really learning that there's a different way to ground yourself when you are feeling those emotions and when you don't have access to certain resources. And that was really my tipping point, Michael, because that really helped me find my faith as well. Because at the end of the day, you can't sometimes control what you have access to and what's in your reach. But what is in our control is our perspective. And once that lady opened up another perspective, I was never the same. I just, I kind of just, that's when my passion really grew for the community, because I know that if it was possible for me, it was possible for everybody else I grew up with. And the hardest part that I've learned to accept is, unfortunately, it does take the youth to accept the help. And sometimes the time is very urgent, Michael. We have our young people dying at very scary rates. And that also kind of goes into our next topic about, back then, our parents' generation, the generation before us, and their generation, um, there was privacy. That was a thing. There was no social media where you're not being overstimulated by so much imagery, so many different examples, so many, oh, you should be this, you should be that, you should be this. This is who you are. This is what it's like. This is what you should not. That can be very conflicting for some people that don't have that connectivity with their inner selves. And that's why I just want to emphasize personal development again, and knowing who you are, having certain resources or a certain adult to sit you down and let you know that you are bigger than just a student. You are bigger than just the school you go to every day. You are bigger than just your parents' child. You are a soul. You are a person. You are everything. And you have power too.
Wow. Okay. So Daz, I want to thank you first of all for sharing some really vulnerable times in your life and your story. I honor you sharing that and the bravery it probably has taken to be public with that. So I hear you on that, and thank you for being so honest for this recording. I really appreciate you.
Thank
Um,
you.
I
Anytime.
think, I love what you said about, we are just humans, and we've had many behind the scenes chat about that. And as you were talking, I'm like, yep, yep, yep. And like, yeah, it's such a commonplace belief, an idea, right? That other people define us, or like, oh, how other people see us or react to us somehow means something, and it doesn't. And I was going back to the teacher that made a difference for you, and I'm sorry, I can't remember her name. But it's, as you were sharing your experiences with her, I kind of like jotted down a thought, like that was an example of you had things modeled for you, not just mentioned. You experienced love, connection. You didn't just, it's not just like in a book or a mystical theory, like you had that human moment
Yes.
this person. And like that is what I'm honing in on, that is really making a difference. Not that learning in theory isn't helpful, but this was like a true real life experience. And I don't know how many young people actually get that all the time, you know?
Absolutely. And Michael, that again, not every youth or every young person can experience that. So I that was my tipping point. And I have to give her all the credit. And especially growing up with a mother that, even though she wasn't emotionally available for my concerns or my feelings and didn't have the patience to understand it, she also was very vulnerable with her story. It reminded us, no, you cannot do that. You cannot fail. You shouldn't want to be like that. You should want to be up here. You should want to be better than me because I had to go through what I went through, and even though it took a while for me to not take it personal, not take it as she's disregarding what's going on with me, but take it as, yes, I should feel prideful that my mother has survived these things and that she was able to be a mother to me. And I just want to make sure that all the sacrifices and all the hurt that she's been through is worth something. And that was also the perspective I had with Jamie Roderick, the same woman that really gave me that in the school system because number one, as an Afro Latina from Hartford, I didn't think that I could relate to my white teacher from Avon, and I know that is so systematical, but that is our reality. And those barriers, those made up barriers, stop us from human connection. Now, I understand that sometimes connectivity and experience and district and upbringing, all of those things play a factor in connectivity. Absolutely. However, when you change your perspective and look at a human for being a human, regardless of this color, regardless of the hair, regardless of the way they articulate themselves and hear their soul, you will find a lot in that. And when that lady didn't stop trying, that's when she broke the ignorance out of me. I wanted to, I was more afraid of being denied and misheard rather than acknowledging the fact that she's actually doing so much more beyond her profession.
Mhm.
She's she's being a woman. She's being an adult ally. This woman was just a person of community, a person vibing and operating on a frequency of love. And that's all she saw. And I'm just grateful that God allowed me at the time, which I didn't know, to connect with her. And like you said, wow, you even brought that perspective to me. I didn't even think that, yeah, she did model what it looks like to have self-care. She did model those private moments or helped me ask certain questions and start questioning myself on certain things so that I can know how to present myself in this world. And I also want to emphasize the aromatherapy aspect. Once that woman really showed me that nature can be a way to heal yourself, she opened up an ancestral door for me. And that's another thing that people don't realize. You can't be choosy with the people that come in your life when you know that you have a destiny or a talent that needs to be showcased or needs to be out there for the world. When you know that you have something that the world needs, take that journey and enjoy it. There are going to be some bumps in the road. There's going to be some potholes that you might get stuck in. However, that is just the course of life, and we have to be grateful for that. And again, it's about changing that perspective. And now I'm a whole entrepreneur where I own my own aromatherapy business, where I want to do what that woman did for me in that classroom when she was dunking lime essential oil on my wrist, like smell it. And I'm like, lady, you're crazy. But then I started, hey, Miss Roderick, can I get some oil? Can I carry your oil for the day? Oh, are you going to be free third period so me and you could talk? Like, and this is my best friend now. But that was truly the tipping point for me, Michael, was sitting across from somebody that does not look like me, sitting across from somebody that only wants to offer something with me, and just being open to it. That was really the tipping point for me.
I want to circle back on you. I said basically young people need to meet adults halfway, however you want to say, if that's if I'm really paraphrasing you correctly. And I was kind of thinking as you were sharing those human to human experiences of, how your life was changed by someone who didn't look like you, but just gave you that grace and that space to be who you are, to, who saw beyond what maybe society and other people has seen before. And so it sounds like, it was a new chapter. And so it kind of, and you had said, really part of your turning point too was you had those doors, opportunities slammed in your face, and you were so afraid of that. And I can totally relate to that. Like for me, one of my biggest fears was being rejected, have people not understand me, to, overcoming my own limitations. And so like I had this visual of like, we need to just keep those doors open. And like when I talked about, you had people who actually modeled, they kept the door open, even if you were struggling or having a bad day or this or that. Like, how can we keep these doors open?
Absolutely. And I think that that's a really good idea. And it's funny that you mentioned how you were visualizing, because as you're, articulating yourself with that question, all I can think and see is a hallway with myself walking down it and just peeking in these doors, And I think that that brings me to really teaching value, how to value yourself. As I was sharing that tipping point, that woman sitting across from me and giving me something I didn't even think that she would want to give me, but not only that, but something I didn't think I deserved. That was a tipping point, and that showed me that yes, I am worthy of every interaction. I am worthy of every opportunity. I am worthy to be able to see what is really out there for me, and worthy enough for everybody else to see me the same way I present myself. And I think that that's the biggest issue. When we're in these school systems and when youth are going into that early crossover of adulthood, your beginning, very, very beginning aspect of being a young professional can crush or it can create you. And the reason I emphasize that is because even after that tipping point, excuse me, there was still doors slammed in my face, of course. And I also want to emphasize how, it can feel even worse when you're really invested into that door. When you look at the hinge, you measure it, you put yourself in a suit and everything to fix this door and get it open, and oh, this isn't the door I was preparing for, and again, that goes into self-worth and understanding that every journey or every path won't be the same. Some paths may end before others. Some paths may align with each other or cross over. And having any human, point blank period, understand that knowing what doors are for you is very important, but also making the door fit to you is very important too. And that also kind of goes into the hurt of employers or different communities that, youth or young people in general think that they see themselves in or want to fit in or want to help create a new way. They're not allowed to because the person behind the door or the community inside the room really isn't for you. So again, understanding self-worth, because keeping that door open, there's always going to be a door open, excuse me. There's always going to be a door open. It's just about walking down the hallway a little bit more past these other doors that
Oh, wow.
hurt.
Yeah. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm like, that was an OMG that you got to keep walking to find that door.
You have to, and
Yeah.
and listen, the steps get heavier. Your knees start to buckle. You're looking at one of these rooms and you're like, I thought I was there. Wait, how so and so get there? And that's also another thing. Comparing has killed society. Comparing has killed the innocence and the overall collective consciousness. When we start to compare opportunities is when we start to hurt our value and self-worth, because everybody is worthy of different things. Not saying that this person is more worthier than this person because of these aspects. No, I mean, there's going to be a door that exactly fits your dimension. And that's what I mean. Having the early awareness or intuition built to know that, I'm struggling a lot to fit in this door right now. I'm struggling a lot. I'm sacrificing a lot. I'm kind of losing myself in this process to fit through this door. And all it takes is that one turn down the hallway to know that there's still some open doors. So, in layman's terms, not to speak in, figurative language again, just really understanding who you are is always going to be number one. And number two, understanding that it's okay. Not every opportunity, not every employer, not every adult ally is going to be for you. And I think I learned that when I went to college, and this is a funny thing that I want to share. I went to a HBCU and I made the decision my senior year to go to an HBCU, specifically Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina, because number one, being from Connecticut and not having certain groups or communities that really emphasize success and personal development as an ethnic person and code switching and all of those supportive avenues and support systems and services that really prepare you for that next endeavor. I really thought I was going to get that at going to a HBCU, excuse me. Being around other people that look like me, getting taught by professors that look like me, that come across the world or had just from all walks of life. And another misconceptions about historically Black colleges, it's not just for Black people. It's for anybody that wants to let their guard down and be safe and work as a community. That is what a HBCU is truly supposed to be about. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have the best experience at a HBCU because what I actually found was specifically Benedict College, and not to say too much, I was a youth that fell through the cracks. I was somebody that constantly reached out through email, showed up at offices begging for a lot of help, looking for my Jamie Roderick on campus, looking for that one person to look at me as a young lady, look at me, number one, as a student that has financial aid pumping through the school. And I know, and again, I'm going to emphasize to all our viewers, knowing your rights anywhere you go, on any campus, any floor, employer, just in general, knowing your rights, even your Miranda rights. That is your prerogative as an American. And that is step one as well when it comes to personal development. So advocating for myself and not being heard or seen by people that look like me hurt me so much more than a lot of things that I actually went through in life. And that's when I truly knew not every door is for me. Not every path or steps to a certain path is going to look the same as my peers. And that took a lot to understand. And I didn't understand that till now. And that happened 3 years ago, and it's just a lot of hurt that comes with it. But having that support system is everything.
Thank you so much for sharing, Daz. As you were talking, we're again bring it back to the hallways and the doors. We talked about doors being slammed. Some positive, experiences were those doors that were not only kept open, you were invited in and reminded, yes, come on in, we're here for you. You talked about doors that maybe you could fit, but it was uncomfortable. You had to squeeze, you had to struggle. I want to talk in a minute about your entrepreneurial journey, because as you were talking about that, I'm like, wow, like as a way to think about entrepreneurship, you just made your own damn door. Like you just said, nope, a door is going to be right here in this blank spot in the hallway, and we're gonna create something. But
Yeah,
another
we're gonna
thought
push it
too
out.
about the doors analogy is, I've had this experiences where like I chose to walk through a door into an opportunity without maybe any problem, but it wasn't what I wanted after all. And there was like this learning process of, oh, like I'm happy I tried it, I guess, but it's not for me, and that's okay. I do you have any thoughts about maybe pressure you ever felt to like how do young people adapt to like decisions and changes in their life? And I think words are spoken over young people. Again, our school system, we can be kind of taught to be compliant and like, oh, like you should this, should that. And there's a lot of power in just, again, just I'd rather like meet and hang with someone who like tried 50 different things, and there's just so much richness than, I'll rag at him a bit. My younger brother, I love him. He's like we're opposites. Like he's like a straight arrow. He knew what he wanted, bing bang boom. Like he just like did it after high school. I was like the river, like I'm flowing, trying this, trying that, trying that. So like it's just so different. And I'm just curious, like what is your reaction hearing me say all this?
I'm laughing nervously. That is my honest reaction because number one, again, it's so surreal because it's not like I'm explaining my experience, right, to you and our viewers right now. But what is most humbling is knowing that I was not like this a year ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago. We literally grow every single day. And do you mind actually rephrasing the question specifically? What is my thoughts as far as you kind of just overall like kind of repeating like what that hallway looks like? Or sorry, I'm just gonna
Sure,
allow
yeah,
you.
I know I threw a lot at you. Really, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Des, on how can young people avoid the pressure of getting it right, getting it perfect, or maybe if they're in an opportunity that maybe they were okay with an opportunity they chose, but
Yes.
later on they figure out I'm not happy here, or I don't know what's next. How did you handle that? And like, what wisdom do you have?
Thank you for asking that question. There was a lot of different approaches and steps. I'm gonna just say like trial and error. It takes trial and error to adapting to a new chapter, a new version of you, your new plan and approach to life. Me personally, I want to bring it back to 2020. I've always been a person that has been different from my environment. Um, I grew up on the city's north end around a lot of roughness. And even though I have a side to me, I always knew that I was a lot more considerate and a lot more lovable than a lot of the people around me. I cared a lot about things where people are like, don't care about that. No, but I care, but I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop questioning why things like this are happening. Also, to be completely transparent with you, losing a friend of mine at 16. Rest in peace, Felipe. Um, that really kind of set me back and really made me realize that there's more to life. When you lack certain things, it shows you or gives you an extra purpose. And I think that that's what first kind of helped me adapt to adulthood and the roughness of how adulthood kind of welcomed me. Because being a graduate of 2020, again, I just stopped going to school in March. I didn't have prom. I didn't have the extracurricular senior activities that kind of help you or show you that you're growing and that you are going to leave the nest soon. I didn't have any of that. I got that over a laptop that died in the middle of class, or a teacher wasn't too interactive or immersed in the experience because, again, we were all going through things as humans. Um, so I would say going through a lot of traumatic situations and growing up in a rough neighborhood showed me that I need to get over if things are going to work out the way that I want them to. Because it didn't work out for my friend. He didn't even have the opportunity to take his breath this morning. So starting off with just being that humble sometimes can help us clear the whiteboard to really understand what we need to do or how can we adapt. And then that led me into starting my business. I didn't have mental health opportunities or different expressions, so I created one. And that's something that I did in my mom's house, playing with oils. Again, something that my teacher showed me, and then connecting it to different things I did with my grandmother growing up, different cultural activities or creations and customs we have, and really kind of looking at it like, whoa, these are two worlds that mean so much to me and that really go together, hand in hand, like PB and J. And that kind of really was my personal approach to what I was dealing with because, again, you can't be a professional, you can't be an adult, you can't welcome yourself or just expect yourself to jumpstart into that new chapter of yours without having your shield at the end of the day, or knowing your limits, or knowing when it's okay, I'm tired, I have to switch up the approach that I'm doing. And that doesn't come from just throwing yourself in, that only comes from really sitting there and having that time to reflect, having that time to reflect, having a peer or a family member or a community that you can find in about these struggles, about these different visions that you have, because of course, sharing your perspective with others can also help others help you and change your perspective to better approach things so that it's not so much pressure. Um, Lastly, another thing that really comes to mind as advice is I'm going to always emphasize faith and spirituality. And I emphasize that because everybody out here that is viewing this right now, and I'm sure you, we all believe in something. And I'm a big person when it comes to free will and freedom being everybody's prerogative. Everybody has the right to freedom and free will, whether you believe in Allah, whether you believe in Buddha, whether you believe in God, whether you believe in Jesus, Yahweh, Yeshua, whether you believe in art, whether you believe in science, whether you believe in the world, whether you believe in Mother Gaia, you have to believe in something because that belief will be your pinnacle, and everything else that comes in between that, you can adapt to because why? You have that pinnacle point. You can look up before you respond. You can look up before you write. You can look up as planning. And I think that people forget that again, we are spirit first. We're not just flesh. That's why everybody has their own personality. Everybody has their own dreams. They have their own approaches and feelings and perceptions. You know, we're very cool, like multi-dimensional beings. There's so much to be a human that it is such a privilege. So I think understanding the simplicity of life can really help adapt to the pressure of things because at the end of the day, the pressure is so temporary, but it's so hard not to feel when you are in the midst of it. And I didn't get that pressure relieved off me until I changed that perspective because it's not going to be a time, place, or any of that. It's going to be a feeling, you know?
Wow. Um, you know, I want to touch on a couple things you said, Des. It's so powerful. And I think um I think throughout our whole conversation you talked about purpose, and I can't agree. Like, that's one of my biggest takeaways to my own life is we're all here for a purpose. We can define that purpose. Again, we
Absolutely.
have the freedom and free will. And I think to me it comes in tandem with hope, right? When we have that hope, it's there to support you. You can lean on it. It can nourish you. Where it's if you don't have hope, it's really hard to kind of get through the day to day. But if we have that hope in whatever capacity, it's just so, so powerful. And I think another theme that I think we talked about that you've especially shared is mutuality, that we're all here to support each other, that we can come to the table together. And you've had those experiences. I've had those experiences. How can we make room for more mutuality? It's kind of rambling there for a second, but I'd love, and I want to honor that we've been talking for a little over an hour. So I do have a couple more questions, and then I'll leave it to you for however long we want to keep talking for today.
Yeah, I
Um,
love the way it's flowing. I think I'm so okay with the pace that we're at. And I think that, especially for our viewers, this is so real right now. And this possibly can be the conversation that somebody else is desiring. And we've brought that to them in the comfort of their own home or off the tip of their fingertips. Hello, gonna emphasize technology and our privilege now. Like the fact that we can also, when we change our perspectives, look into the resources we already have in front of us and utilize them on a whole nother level.
mhm. I agree.
Mhm.
I'd love to, Des, hear more about your journey to entrepreneurship. Like what I know you've talked about, you had that model for you. You had a passion for oils. You it was something that from hearing from you just seemed really exciting and really natural. So I don't want to speak for you on what it was like, but is there anything else for young people listening or even adults, any as humans, right? What was that creative process like for you, and what advice do you have for people who are really curious about, um, again, finding ways to kind of blend purpose and income and freedom kind of all together, you know?
Absolutely. And thank you. I'm humble as an entrepreneur because shout out to all my entrepreneurs out there and just anybody that is just genuinely a business driven person, right? You don't have to necessarily have the fancy term entrepreneur to be respected as a person that, puts your foot down in the workplace or on your own terms or can find creative ways to really distribute certain resources or messages out there, um, yeah, just shout out to everybody that is on their own free will and who is themselves unapologetically, because I think that that is also a big part of entrepreneurship. And kind of to backpedal, to share a little bit about the process that I've been indulging in because I'm still currently on my entrepreneurial journey. It started with, again, learning who I was. You know, not only am I, I also want to, okay, let me just start off here. We are more than just what we put on papers or when you fill out that application, those boxes you check off. You're more than that. And to start my business journey, I really had to, number one, find an issue that I wholeheartedly am in disgust with, but something that I have so much passion for as well, that I have the drive to change, that I have the willpower or just the hope or again, that vision, visualizing meditation, everybody that first of all, that's my first golden nugget. I just want to give out there, like, please sit down, have a moment to be still. And I know it's hard. I'm a person that has ADHD and I'm very hyperactive. So it's hard for me to find those stillness moments, but utilizing sound bowls, essential oils, YouTube, putting certain sounds on, music and everything that have that moment will be everything because everything we need is always within. It just, it's those personal blocks and how we can be our own enemy to kind of hurt us from reaching deep within, excuse me. Um, Back to what I was saying specifically about finding myself, I really had to dive into my family history. I come from a family that has came over from Puerto Rico, and I'm the second generation in America. And I'm grateful for that for a couple of reasons. My great grandmothers and their mothers and their siblings all experience a certain level of trauma, right? From experiencing poverty on the island, especially, I want to emphasize the timeline from them being in Puerto Rico from the 1950s to like the mid 60s and coming to America and not learning English in time to properly adapt to a country. Lacking certain educational resources when they became of age because of the fact that working was prioritized because food needed to be on the table. So, trickling down to my parents, who were the first generation, and their cousins was the first generation to be educated and have a high school diploma. and to actually understand what it's like to be an American and how it looks and everything. Um, my grandmother was everything to me because I've watched other people have the privilege of having elders in their family and having certain generational things passed down so that they can understand their foundation, but that wasn't my luxury. When when I came into the world, three of my grandparents were deceased already. So my only source of understanding who I was my grandmother from Vega Baja, Puerto Rico. And she was a Black woman as well. And I want to also emphasize identity when you're understanding who you are. I am a Black woman, but I'm also a Hispanic woman. That is my ethnicity. I'm Puerto Rican. And unfortunately, growing up in America, they have always made me choose one or the other. And I had to learn my own freedom and my own confidence to allow somebody else never to take that away from me ever again. And that took the little moments with my grandmother and reflecting back on that as throughout my teenage years after I lost her at the age of 14, not being able to ask her certain questions when I got to certain ages where I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I had my grandmother. But you know what I had, Michael? I had memories of making candles with my grandmother. I had memories of me dancing in the living room, shaking maracas. I had folk tales that my grandmother would tell me. I had her being unapologetic with her 4C hair and just being who she was and being super loud about who she was. That is what truly created this unapologeticness in me. Because if my grandmother came to this country and still was unapologetic about who she is and not the person making fun of her for not being able to pronounce a word correctly or her not being, you know, depressed or stuck or stagnant because she can't have certain educational or employment opportunities because she doesn't have a high school diploma. I've never seen my grandmother's will affected by any of those worldly things. And when I found that again, I really had to understand how many other people can truly relate to me when it comes to piecing who you are together like it's a puzzle. And that's what really brought me back to the moments with Jamie Roderick, too. Because when she showed me those essential oils and I thought about those candles and I just about all the beautiful cultural things that I am a part of and the country I live in now and all of the amazing limitless opportunities, all the opportunities to meet people, that can relate or benefit from these services or would love to be culturally inclusive and educated. I really saw that I can actually do something in this world. And that's a big part of the entrepreneurship journey that nobody really acknowledges. You have to feel like you are wanted. You have to feel like you have something to offer. You have to have something to offer. And that is just yourself. And that is literally just okay because you are enough. And that's where it literally starts. Then that progressed into again 2020 when I had all this free time on my hands and I felt so depressed because I was like, wow, what do I do? I'm supposed to be going to college in fall semester. I haven't been to school since March. I'm supposed to be moving out of the state. I've saved all this money. And another thing I want to emphasize and kind of backtrack is back to that ambassador program I talked about that I was exposed to in my teenage years. Shout out to Tiffany Young. She was the first community director for the Hartford Yard Goats, and she was the one that started that youth ambassador program that really, really gave students in Hartford an opportunity to see themselves in a different light, to be educated on financial literacy through different partnering banks of the community to come in and have a PowerPoint to present us and give us an experience where we can know what to do in a real life when we come across our money or we start to work and everything. Again, they also helped us with elevator pitches, building our resume, personal branding and understanding what it is to just represent yourself as a brand, who you are, knowing who you are, how you want to present yourself, how you want to sound, what you want to accomplish, and being conscious of that when you make daily interactions so that your life can be intentional. So you can be intentional about that. That helped me really save money for college when I began working at 16, but also made me believe that I could have a business one day because I did have that experience in that workshop. And that goes back to our systems and our viewers who are watching and you teachers, even if you guys have different skills personally, it's not a crime to share that with the youth. Of course, in a way where boundaries aren't crossed over for you or the youth, having any personable moment with human to human is just so much to it. It's so much richness in that. That is truly life's richness. Being rich is not money. It's truly just being full of life, being full of spirit. And kind of to fast forward because I don't want to drag or ramble, but I really want to hit these key notes and how the journey is so real because it's always something that triggers another thing and creates the domino effect. So in 2020, again, as I'm preparing for college and I'm evaluating just like my finances and how hard I've been working at Old Navy, guys. Like, and it starts everywhere. It starts everywhere. Another great advice in the midst of this is get started. There's opportunities out there for employment. You can never be too early to express your interests to be productive. You know, even if that isn't you being compensated from an employer, you can do that through your community resources, your Boys and Girls Club, through volunteer experiences, just having those interactive moments where you find yourself in those moments is going to help you no matter what. Um, I bought my first set of essential oils and a doTERRA certification with my first stimulus check. And I want to be vulnerable and I want to share that with you because some youth have a mindset that just needs to be guided. I was just lucky enough to be a youth where I was so tired of the pain and sickness around me that it made me want to escape. So when I got certain opportunities, I tried my best to use them as much as I can. And I do not regret that because you know what? I was able to start my business off of that. I got my first essential oil pack. I started blending oils after getting my doTERRA certification to be an essential oil specialist. I understood the process of, you know, how these essential oils are extracted, where these plants are actually coming from. Not only that, but how to actually put them to use topically, internally, or externally, how to integrate them in our daily lives and products in our homes. And I also want to emphasize back to spirituality. Business is not just within the physical realm. You're operating on a frequency. You have to be intentional about what you want to put out in this atmosphere to return back to you and your loved ones. Because a lot of people don't consider consumerism, if I said that correctly, excuse my pronunciation. It's more than just here you go, here's the money, here's my product. It's what am I going to do with this product? How does this product make me feel? What energy does this product already have on it? And that was something that I really thought about when I created my business, the intention, because I'm using essential oil, something that has its own frequency, its own healing ability, its own properties. It comes from a plant. There's so many steps to essential oils and aromatherapy overall that I kind of fell in love with it and chose to really stick with that industry because that was me. I was that plant that didn't know how to be used and purposeful. And through experience of life, I was picked, I was sourced, I was scavenged, I was extracted, I was manipulated, and now I am this beautiful product that can be purposeful, that can be spread, I can last, I can stretch, I can be, you know, flexible within life now because I seen the original state I came in and I know what I can become. And that is so much more. And that was really my process with the entrepreneurship and starting Simmer Down Sensations, then evaluating again the mission and purpose that I wanted to fight against or accomplish or help the world solve. And that was for me personally the mental health stigma in the marginalized communities. And when I say marginalized communities, I mean not just talking about complexion or people of color or people of ethnic backgrounds, because that's the first thing that we think about when we think of oppression. No, I mean, I'm talking about my LGBTQ plus community. I'm talking about my elders. I'm talking about the young people. I'm talking about everybody else that has experienced some sort of trauma, period, our veterans, everybody that has experienced or has trauma stored within them that it needs to be released. Not only that, I really saw myself helping my mother. I saw myself helping my grandmother if she was still here with whatever she went through getting over to this country and the challenges she had to endure raising four children by herself as a single mother in this country, not having education, not having certain resources or support groups to succeed to the standard that we believe is succeeding. But in reality, she did succeed because you know what? I'm her granddaughter. And I think that once again, to circle back, it's the simplicity of life when it comes to entrepreneurship, understanding who you are, your purpose, what you want to put out there, your intention, and how you're going to do it. And lastly, to end this off, the way I did it was, again, utilizing my finances correctly. YouTube, using technology, not being afraid of sharing my dream with other people to allow them to help me articulate myself in a way where I could be professional, where it could be presented as a business statement or as a legitimate business with an LLC that an employer or corporate or corporation can respect and want to work with. You know, you have to believe it for yourself so that it can be out there. And my advice to everybody who is already an entrepreneur, who is just thinking of being an entrepreneur, who doesn't know what an entrepreneur is, it starts with you. It starts with what's in your community. It starts with you appreciating everything that is around you and having gratitude. Because once you have gratitude, your creativity flows. When your creativity flows, your productivity flows. And then on, it's everything you need within you. Utilize these programs, save your money. Don't be afraid to start with what you have, draw, be creative, be a child with your entrepreneurship journey. And for those like myself that had to put our business on pause to go to school, to pay our bills, to literally just be able to take the pressure off. Because I also want to emphasize when you start a business, there's another level of mental health that comes into play because am I going to fail? Am I going to fail as a human if this business proposal doesn't pass through? Or is my business even successful or is it worthy enough to be showcased because my logo doesn't look this way or my product doesn't look this way? It starts from authenticity. You being your authentic self is there's always going to be a consumer or a person that is going to want to support you for that. So the journey never truly ends. And that's there is to entrepreneurship.
Thank you so much, Jazz. I think um, I think for me what I heard is to you it built your entrepreneurial journey built off of your life lessons, experiences, the learning of who you are, and just I just feel and hear so much passion and purpose. And to me, I also took that your journey to entrepreneurship is was a way to honor your own creativity and uniqueness, but also to meet a need and help others. And
Absolutely.
so I think, and I want to go back to what you shared earlier, that every single person on this earth has a gift. And I also want to go back to what you said, that you didn't say exactly this phrase, but you ever heard the phrase comparison is a thief of joy? You talked about comparing, to not compare. And so I think to me, my brain's like loving every second of hearing your story and your journey to this. And so I'm so grateful that you are doing this and being who you are, but you took the time to talk with me today, to our listeners. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Daz. Is there anything else on your mind? Just I think we talked about really everything we set out to talk about today, but is there anything on your heart and mind you want to leave our listeners with?
Absolutely. All you listeners have a talent. All you guys have so many beautiful things about you. And it just takes the layers to, you know, that you got to get through to find that gem within you. I also want to conclude excuse me, please edit that. I also want to include on the entrepreneurship aspect, I really want to leave the audience with also understanding the importance of, like you said, not comparing yourself, understanding your craft. And to give an example of that, what makes me different from other candle owners and aromatherapy businesses, I'm raw, I'm real, I'm natural. I use a holistic approach to the way that I communicate and interact, excuse me, with my customers, with my support group, with my, you know, sensationals. Because another thing, me personally, I don't view everybody that comes and wants to buy something from my business or wants to utilize a service that I provide as a consumer. I look at them as people. I look at them as my brother and my sisters and people of a community. And that really kind of helps you naturally as an entrepreneur. For example, you know, of course, when I first did my first pop-up shops and first my showcases and really presented my business, of course, you know, I looked at other candle companies like, wow, that looks really professional. Yeah, that looks really good. But you know what? The candles that I make made of coconut wax and those rose petals that I scavenged for, I cleaned and hydrated myself, all of that goes into the reason why people want to support you, the groundwork, the intention behind it. Be unapologetically authentic. And I bring that into just in general what I really want to leave our viewers with.
It's 17 hours.
So sorry. Being authentic with yourself, understanding that you can do everything you desire to do in the position that you are in. It's just about figuring out what it looks like, what steps to take. And it's so okay for you to throw your hands up and say, God or whoever's listening, show me the way. You know, sometimes it takes that. Sometimes it takes, you know, I don't like to use this term, but I know it's very popular now. Crash out. It's okay to crash out. It's okay to have a breakdown moment. Of course, by all means, in a safe environment with safe people around. But sometimes hitting rock bottom, like I did in 2020, when I felt like my life was falling apart and taking for granted some of these school activities and interactions and thinking I'm entitled to that. But when it was snatched from me, how much it affected me, you know? And also, another thing with back to our youth, and the reason why you and I are here and do what we do, Michael, there's so many cracks that youth can fall into. These youth that are very disconnected can be in our schools, can be in our immediate surroundings through family members. These youth can be in rich and middle class families where it may look like everything is fine and dandy, but there can be a mental health crisis at hand where a human needs some attention and love. You know, I also want to emphasize the juvenile justice system. That's another thing the system can do to really help disconnected youth and just in general adults. Rehabilitation is number one. We cannot keep punishing people for crimes or different actions and behaviors that they're doing without understanding what happened. Not why are you doing this? Who are you? I don't understand. It's what happened to you. You were a child at one point. You grew into the person that you are. So let me talk to the child in you to help you and assess what's going on. Um, our disconnected youth are also in these streets. They're in these Boys and Girls Club. They're already utilizing whatever they can at their hands. And as adult allies, when you start to notice certain signs like disruptive behavior, certain conflicts or emotions, facial expressions, body language, those signs, it's okay to approach them. And even when you're denied, it will take some time for that youth to really meet you halfway because you are doing everything you can as a human, and you having concern is number one. Some people don't even know how to have concern or be considerate or to see another person. Seeing the another person is everything. So cut yourself that slack when you are making steps to be a more intentional person in your community. It's not going to happen in one day. We all wish we can be Oprah and say, you get out, you get out, you get out. You. That's not our reality. But the groundwork and the connectivity, the consciousness is always going to be number one, bringing it back to our roots to stay rooted. One thing that really has brought me to be in this chair to talk with you right now, Michael, is for me to be rooted, to never forget who came before me, who gave birth to me, gave me life, and also who I'm going to become, who I am now, and enjoying every painful moment. And I just really want to leave our viewers with that, enjoying every painful moment and understanding that life wouldn't be life if we didn't have our ups and downs, our left to rights, our diagonal, every direction you can think of. Let's take life in all of those directions with pride, and that will change our perspective. I pray that that will help our world and help the state of politics, our economy. It really starts with us in our heart, because that is the frequency we're putting out. When we can raise the frequency and vibration of our environment in our world, that is what's really going to start making the change. And Michael, you are an amazing person. And I just want to emphasize to all our professionals and youth out there, when you come across somebody that wants to extend something as simple as love, something as simple as an ear, something as simple as a couple of words, let's not be ungrateful that it wasn't what we thought, what it wasn't what we wanted, what it wasn't how we wanted it to sound. Let's just meet them where they are so they can meet us where we are. God bless everybody.
Thank you so much, Dazmarie. I've been honored to have met you all these months ago, and I'm especially honored to have spent the past little over an hour and a half talking with you just now. And I know our listeners will be as well. So just thank you from the bottom of my heart. I think, my intention for starting this podcast, again, I'm not professional at this, but it is to just elevate voices of people that need to be heard. And I'm so honored that you are our very first guest on this podcast. And thank you for your wisdom and your honesty and integrity and your bravery and sharing a little bit about who you are, what you've been through, what you're doing right now, your dreams, your hopes, your fears, everything that we need to hear as humans right now. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'd love to have, keep collaborating with you in other ways. I definitely know this is not the last time we'll be collaborating on things together, but as far as our first episode, just thank you so much.
Yes. And thank you for having me. Thank you for giving a youth, another human, another woman, the opportunity to speak, share my story on my terms with my words. You are everything that we could desire as a person in this community that is really making a change. You are everything. And, your story matters as well as an adult ally. And I just want to also emphasize how much this opportunity has meant for me, to share my story, to be seen, to be asked to be a guest speaker, because my younger self is screaming right now because we never thought we would be on a podcast. So you already are helping me create generational blessings and share an experience that I had that can maybe empower another person. And I pray that another person can be in the seat telling you the story, or maybe you can be in a seat telling your story. We all deserve this. And lastly, vulnerability is not weakness. It's how we actually start the productivity and change. Thank you again. I really appreciate this. And Street Smart, of course, and the whole entire team that has created this on top of everything you've been personally doing. I just can't thank you guys enough, honestly.
Thank you so much, Dazmarie. And on that note, I could talk with you forever. So I'm going to unfortunately have to say to our listeners out there, you've been blessed with an amazing guest with Dazmarie. Please take what she said, reflect on it, think about it. How does it apply in your own life? How does it apply? And how can you take the knowledge that she shared and bring it back to your family, your community, wherever you are? And just how can we keep making the world a better place? So, on that note, thank you so much for listening. And until next time.
Thank you. Until next time.